Okay, so today we're going to start out.
Pete's nervous, guys.
I'm nervous about this one. We're going to start out talking about an old podcast guest that we had named Sam Forster.
How old was the podcast?
1 month old.
That's not that old, dude. That was
so pretty recently.
That just happened. Don't try to draw distance between yourself and this podcast feed. You're in there, dude.
little backstory, and we're so like not a part of this story, but we kind of are because we're like one of the only interviews of this guy. So this guy Sam Forster, when I interviewed him, he had a book about transit, and it was very interesting. It was very like pro transit take. Go back and listen.
Hot take.
Yeah, and but he told me
I'm pro transit.
He told me in that episode that he was working on a new book that he had coming out very soon, and he said that it was about race. So I said, okay, that sounds cool. Like, let me know and when it comes out, and I'll keep an eye out, right? So it dropped yesterday, and it turns out that his book about race was him dressing up in blackface and hitchhiking in America. And then like documenting whether or not he was picked up when he was like himself versus in a character in blackface, right? And so this was like his book about race. Okay, I have a lot of thoughts actually. And here's the thing, like I do feel biased towards him a little bit because I spoke with him. Everyone in the universe is dunking on him very madly because he's just like a rando guy. And you know, there's that whole thing when you know someone somewhat personally, like you have a different impression than perhaps. So I'm going to be a little bit like, if we're going to do a good cop, bad cop, I'm going to be the good cop today, sort of a thing. But okay, I should actually mention that it got, as of last time I've checked, this like over 12 million impressions on Twitter when he tweeted this. And the book is a #1 bestseller on Amazon for like the race diversity category.
Well, okay.
And Blocked and Reported, one of my all-time favorite podcasts, already dropped a podcast on it, reviewing it. Katie Herzog already read the book and like they reviewed it. So go listen to that if you want like in-depth review of what is actually happening in the book itself.
But if you just want to hear two dumbasses pontificate.
Yeah. But I mean, like I've been messaging Sam about this a little bit. He messaged me this morning or last night, I think, and we had a little like moment about it. And I invited him onto this podcast, and he has a link, so at any moment he could technically hop on. I doubt he will, but I told him he can come on here and defend himself. He has like open invite to come in and defend himself from the haters. So okay. Yeah, what are your hot takes? I know that you immediately just started laughing on the phone when I told you about this, but give me your hot take, and then I'm gonna follow up with my my thoughts.
I can't stop rummaging through the comedic ore of this fucking situation, because it's like, sure, you could think about, and I'm sure we will get into a thoughtful discussion on race and race relations and the way that white people relate to race in America. But I can't stop thinking about this character that he put together and how racist it was. Is it just like, because there's so many levels of racism that you can achieve in an endeavor like this. Like, was he just painting his face black with like brown paint? Did he have a black guy outfit?
So this is what he did, just to get it on the table. He went to a makeup store or something and got like a brown tone makeup, and then he got a wig. And I don't know what he was dressed as.
What kind of wig was it?
I don't know. And like he said that he's not releasing pictures also, and everyone online is like, no,
it's like a fucking Superfly afro.
Give us the pictures.
It's like a 3-foot afro, dude. Oh, dude, yeah. No, I can't stop just rolling over on the floor thinking about all of the ways that this could have happened and all of the ways that it did happen. I don't have any hot takes. It's just a patently crazy thing to do. I'll tell you, I'll get my one main like critique out of the way, which is just like, this was something that I feel like I had to learn the hard way. As like, I feel like in the mid 2000s, if you're a straight white guy and you're not just surrounded by other straight white guys, somebody jumped you in to the conversation around like appropriation and around what your space should be culturally and relating to people of color and stuff like that. And in some ways, for certain people, it was like a sloppy jumping in. Some people got a better kind of primer to all of it. But one of the things that I ended up taking away from a lot of those experiences, which was told to me a lot, which is like, as white people and just as men in general, I think it's very easy to, because you have come to a certain age and you do know quite a lot of things, it's easy to think that you could form a psychological experiment to put yourself in the position of somebody else. Mm-hmm. And like, that's something that a lot of racism comes from, that exact logical fallacy. And it's unintentional. And a lot of time it's with the best intentions, where someone will be like, well, I just can't see how it would have been this way for them, or just like the idea, and it's patently false, like in a scientifically robust way. It's basically impossible for you to put yourself in someone else's shoes. You can try as like a psychological experiment. We all should. Go ahead. Yeah, you got a rebuttal.
I was gonna say, I mean, one thing that my initial thought was like, maybe he's kind of ignorant about this being as offensive as it is. We actually talked about this on the phone yesterday. Yeah. But apparently, he starts the book talking about how he realizes that this could be hyper offensive, but he thinks that it's worthwhile to do anyway. And he has this little paragraph about how, if you try to cancel me, I'm gonna come after you, and I'm gonna like ruin you if you try to cancel me. And like, it's like weird and kind of dark, but yeah, apparently like he was well aware that this is offensive. He's well aware, like, historically how this could play, and he has a section where he goes in through like all the historical examples where white reporters did this in the past, and there's like 4 books that have been written on this or something like this, 4 famous cases, and it goes through all of them. So he does like place this in history.
Oh wow.
This actually leads me to my hot take about what I think that he's up to.
Sure, please.
I mean, not to be like mega just like cynical, but also stating the obvious, but also, I don't know, I could totally be wrong about this, but like, given that he was aware of how offensive this is, I think this is just straight attention-seeking behavior, and I think he watched too many Andy Kaufman videos, and so
Sam, we have Sam on the line right now.
No, but like,
I'm gonna worry you.
tell me this isn't Andy Kaufman. This is like an Andy Kaufman sketch. Yeah. Like through and through. And even like holding it and maintaining the line on Twitter and everything, like that's also an Andy Kaufman thing, where he's just like leaning into the bit. I think it is still a bit. And like another like layer of this that I think is interesting is that he's a good writer. He's a colorful writer. He has a lot of personality in his writing. And as a person, he is very soft-spoken. He talks very slowly. He has kind of like a bland, very mellow affect. And so I think that like, this is what I do as a writer too. I create a character when I write. I am not myself when I write, because my personality is also just like, I'm not Hunter S. Thompson, right? My writing is crazy. My writing goes over the edge. And so I think that this as a project was like a literary endeavor that he may or may, like, let's be real, he may or may not even have done this. The fact he didn't release pictures is very telling. I think that this might be a straight up fiction book that is an Andy Kaufman play.
Amazing.
One other little note here is that right before I spoke with him, he had just gotten back from Israel. Like, the Israel-Palestine conflict is happening. Dude flew there and like did reporting or whatever, and like I think he got some pieces published in like mainstream outlets as well, but he's also done Ukraine reporting. He's trying very, very, very hard to report on issues that are going to like draw attention to himself. And so I mean, like, which is a smart move if you're trying to draw, I mean, like exactly draw attention to yourself. And like, he's not like an expert in the Middle East. So why is he going to the Middle East? He's not an expert in Ukraine policy. So he's not Graham Wood, you know what I mean? Like, so why is he going to Ukraine? So yeah, it's attention-seeking behavior layered onto literary character with Andy Kaufman.
Hey, I thought I was supposed to be the bad cop.
I'm not saying I mean my good copness here is I don't think he's a bad person. I just think that it's
Well, I think that there's you know, that's such an interesting thing to say, is like not a bad person, because at the end of the day, like your intent just isn't functional in your good or bad personness. It's like the repercussions of the things that you do.
I'm actually like with you in this even more because I'm not even saying his intentions were good.
Right.
I think his
Okay,
intentions are very questionable.
here's I'm gonna I my yeah yeah I mean, any way you cut it, either, well, okay, three things real quick. One, first of all, the first part of the book that you're talking about, very incel coded.
Mm.
The like, and then I'll find you and I'll find your family, and I'm like, oh man, this all reads of like somebody that doesn't have control of their body. You know what I mean? Like people who are like have like revenge fantasies and stuff, that's like very like incel bully coded, which is just a weird thing to include in any kind of book. Like I'm like,
I
don't
do.
don't you come after me, because I'll come after you. It's
You're
just like,
absolutely right, but I also don't think that that's him. That does not like seem like him at all, but it seems like a literary character that he would have in his mind.
oh,
It
I
seems like
like
a
that.
fiction character. Even that like supports my perspective on this. And like I guess why I even resonate with his take is that I feel like I could do this. I just never absolutely would. But I mean, I've written some like questionable material out there that could be very offensive, more offensive to like Christian normies, but still like you're offending people when you
Yeah,
talk
but
about
why
like
not
very
just write it? What then? Why not just novelize it, right? Like
that's what I do. See,
why
that's
like
what I exactly
yeah, but yeah,
right.
and in his situation, why not do that? Because like presenting it like this, it becomes extremely problematic, and then you don't get the creative license to be a freak. Like it's like we have to give comedians and writers mostly and mainly the ability to perform absurd thought experiments that most of us would find morally repugnant, because that's how you mine the shit. Like it
You're
doesn't,
helping
it's
me
not
put my view together on this a little bit, Evan. This is good. So
good.
that is where I think he is Andy Kaufman more than a
Okay.
literary figure because Andy Kaufman wouldn't write fiction, even though like his whole thing is fictitious. He
Right.
writes quote or not writes, but like he plays nonfiction. So I think
Right.
that's what I think that he literally is trying to do a modern Andy Kaufman, even if he doesn't admit that to himself. Like
Which
right.
is absurd, right? Because like we live in a time where you can't divorce any aspect of art from any other aspect of the art, including the
Yeah,
artist and their
dude.
background. Like it's all
Yeah.
an integrated experience now, as it should be. As it should be. We never should have separated the art from the artist. That's not like, we have to do that now in retrospect, but it's not something that we do now, like as a future driven, you know, society. Like, and it's not something we should do for people either, because you are a part of the things that you make, and if you do something morally repugnant, well, you better have been trying to figure something out, or pushing a boundary, or have something deeper to say about it. But like I'm glad that you've prevented me from getting to my main point for so long,
Oh,
because
let's hear it. Dive in.
it is a really good main point, and this was one of the things that I took away strongest from my conversations with people of color about their experiences. Because man, okay, I grew up mostly in neighborhoods of color. I grew up around, you know, just broken around brown people generally, and in the hood. And so as a white kid, I took a lot of that stuff onto myself. You know, I code switched to be in places at times, and there's a lot of an experience like that, where when you're born in it, you grow in it, and it's the soil that you're in, you think, well, I'm one of these plants.
Hmm.
And one of the things that was really effectively kind of drilled for me was like, you just can't intellectualize the experience of any other person, let alone a brown person. Like there's just elements to that experience that viscerally you'll never be able to even kind of wrap your head around what it feels like ever, because it just is so patently different, you know, to live. I mean, I could go deeper into that, into the things that I kind of know now that I can't put myself in philosophically. Like there's,
People do adapt whatever culture they live in, right? Like if you and I moved
yeah,
to England, we'd start talking semi-British
yeah,
E within like a year, right? So
which
there's
is,
like that's all legitimate. It's totally okay, I think, to take on just
yeah.
whatever neighborhood culture,
Oh,
even if the skin colors don't totally match up. This is just humanity. This is what we, and I think that that's innocent and fine.
10,000%. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And like, dude, get me around certain people, and like everything about me changes because I'm coming to the level of the group, and we all share a language that isn't the language that I speak in everyday life. And that's an experience that we share as people privately with each other.
You want
and
to know a
everybody.
funny trip? You want to know a
Yeah.
funny little?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
reading
go
a book
ahead.
right now about status,
Yeah.
and this guy says that any group ever, whether it's in the office or like in the grocery store or the beach, we automatically calculate who has the most status in that group. We just know automatically, and we all are like, our voice inflection all immediately goes to the tone of whoever that person is. So like, this is so insanely subconscious. We don't even recognize this, but we all do it all the time, nonstop. We are status obsessed creatures, and we will, like, this is part of what you're talking about, like, we just do this. Like, it can't be helped.
Which is why the conversation around appropriation and code switching is nuanced, and it isn't as black and white as I think that we've been kind of like pushed to believe from the more extreme sides of liberal thought, where it's like, yeah, man, like there's a lot of natural behavioral patterns, but then you get egregious white people coming up to random black people that they've never met before and being like, hey, my brother, and it's just like, hey, man,
I know
how about
people who do that. It's so
yeah, me too.
cringy.
And it's so repugnant. And if it means that white people aren't allowed to be like dapping up and saying my brother anymore just because those people can't, I'm like, I'll pay the cost, I'll pay the toll. But listen, here's my point. My point is that, and I'll use a specific example, one that was kind of brought to me, which is that you just don't know what it feels like to walk into a room and have the first thing that people notice be your blackness. And as a white person, there's no analog to that. There's no analog.
Totally. So you just go to Africa, go with the only white person in the country. It's very similar.
But you don't live in Africa, right? You live in the United States. And when
you said there are no analogs. I just think that there are some analogs.
There's there's analogs for other people. Yeah, but if like for other people that have been born
I'm just saying we're not unique and special as we think that we are. White people are like 13% of the human population. We always think that the world revolves around us, and we totally don't. I think that's a semi questionable, semi-problematic phrase.
We could go into the
into
the meta rabbit hole of like the way that ethnocentrism kind of like affects the internal perception of racism from the inside, right? But like as white people seeing the world, right, being like the ethnocentrism of racism creating exactly the perspective that you're talking about, that we live in a white coded world where we're not actually that much. But what I mean is that effectively in the United States, like that's an experience that you would have to have an extremely exotic situation to replicate, and even then you'd be replicating something that isn't exactly what we're talking about, right? Like,
can I tell you exactly why? And you're so like on the ball here.
Sure.
Why the whole thing that Sam Forster did is, oh God, it's just not a good thing. Like
if you say my point right now, I'm gonna go to Sacramento and beat your ass, dude. I've been waiting for 20 minutes to say this, but go ahead.
I thought you already said the point.
No. I'm still making my way around to it, but I hope that you're gonna interrupt me and tell me my point right now.
I don't think I am, but I'll go ahead and say it.
Hit me, yeah.
I've teed it up here. Is that like he just didn't do a thing that would, like, he didn't do a normal action that would elicit any sort of relevant behavior. No one hitchhikes. He hitchhiked.
Oh,
that's what he did.
Amazing. That's an amazing take.
That's
so true. Like, I never would have thought of that, but that is so. It's like what is it, 1978, dude?
He did like him as himself trying to hitchhike, and then him like dressed in blackface trying to hitchhike. It's like,
dude, I filmed a documentary.
Like, what are you actually gonna learn here?
15 years ago, I filmed a documentary about hitchhiking. I never released it, but I did a lot of hitchhiking in my early 20s.
I have to see this. Really?
Yeah, totally.
Dude, but let's put it on the channel.
Let's go. But it was hard for me to get rides back then as like a just as whoever I was then, you know what I mean? Like hitchhiking was already not a thing. But here's my point, Peter. Here's my point.
Okay, yeah, let's hear it. Okay,
here's my big point that I've been circling around like a shark.
I hope I disagree. So I can
oh God, please. I don't think you can. I don't think it's an assailable point. The point is, if you want to know more about the experience of Black people in America, ask them.
Dude. Surely that's what
that was my takeaway. That was my takeaway from the whole appropriation conversation, where there was all these kind of patently absurd things that were pushed at me, where they were like, you should feel this way because you're this, or you should not be in this space because you're like this. And it took me a while to kind of separate the wheat from the chaff, where I was like, you're just angry. Somebody hurt you, and now I've become the symbol for that pain. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's not me, babe. You know what I mean? But there was things I did take away, which was that, yes, like it is often a problem for overly educated people that you think you can philosophize your way into someone else's perspective. And actually, the energy involved in constructing a fictitious reality is so much more vast than the ability to just go and ask a simple question of a person that you're actually trying to figure out what their perspective is like, you know?
Yeah, totally. I gotta wrap this up in 5 minutes.
Okay.
But no, I totally agree. I'm 100% on board.
You want to know what it's like to be hitchhiking as a Black man in America? Go find a Black man that's been hitchhiking in America and interview him. And that to me is the point of this whole thing, where it's like, if you're in a position where you're thinking about, or he's like, well, people have done this before and I see the utility in it. I'm like, well, no, you don't, because you're putting all of this energy into something that is so much less effective than just interviewing Black people. You know?
Oh, absolutely. But here is the thing. And for anybody who like doubts me on my broader point here, just right now, you're probably on YouTube, Google Andy Kaufman skits or Andy Kaufman sketches and like watch him wrestle women and then like think about this. This is what's happening. And it's okay. It is, if I could like be like pro him for just a second, it's almost such high level art, if this is art, that it's almost okay again. This is the only way that it's even remotely okay, is if it is something that could be in the like the Guggenheim or the MoMA as like as a bit, as like an Andy Kaufman who comes back to life and does. That's the only way this makes any sense at all. Otherwise, it's just like
it's not high art. It's so divorced from its like social context.
I mean, like it high art in the sense of Andy Kaufman wrestling women, right? It's that.
Yeah, but he was being an iconoclast in the 60s, right? Like when iconoclasm was actually something that made people feel something. It's like iconoclasm isn't something that we even give a fuck about anymore. We do it like with coffee. We do it with breakfast, you know? Like
Trump does this. Trump's an iconoclast.
That's true. That's his whole. Okay, that's true.
That's his whole thing too.
That's his whole brand.
I got to wrap this up. But yeah, good takes. We'll follow this. Sam, you're still welcome to come on and defend yourself here. Love to have you on. We'll hop on anytime.
Love to have you on, buddy. Apparently, I'm not the bad cop, so it's Pete you're gonna have to watch out for.
Yeah, but we laugh and we have fun. I don't think we're gonna bite anybody's head off.
No,
okay,
no.
Cool, man. All right, till next time.
All right, bud.